Fuck yes. Welcome to After the Hype. I'm your host, Bryan Dressel. With me, as always, are Jonathan Hardesty.
Yay.
And Emily Blake.
Hi.
That's it this week. Both the other co-hosts cannot be here this week.
Oh,
sad story. But we do have Tom Ford here.
Hey, I make movies, apparently.
Yeah, he's going to have to serve as both of them.
Yeah.
I'll try to live up to their high standards.
That's gonna be tough.
That's
Okay,
a fitting
fair enough.
statement given that they're
I guess
both
I'll
women
leave.
and this week has happened.
Yeah. Ooh, what a fun week.
Yeah.
What was the last episode we had you on? Was it for the movie you directed?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yes. I think that might have been it.
Oh, yeah.
Unless we did Oculus after, but I think that was before.
Yeah. I
No, Oculus was before.
Yeah, I think that one
Yeah.
was before.
It's at least been about like 30 weeks or so.
Yeah. And
Well,
before,
how's director life been treating you?
or fashion.
Fashion's been more busy than directing.
Yeah.
I can see that.
I've never gotten tired of making fun of your name, and I've known you for like 6 years now.
Yeah.
You know what? Good for me.
I've only boarded this train fairly late in the game, and I'm okay with it.
As soon as you realize Tom Ford, oh yeah.
Yeah, cool.
If I ever actually want to be famous for myself, I'm going to have to change my name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shoot.
Let's do a where have you been doing? I can go first. I know I said last time that I was debating on stopping watching American Horror Story, but I didn't, and I kept watching, and I'm so glad that I did because I got to Hotel, which is one of the best solid seasons of any TV show ever if you're into melodrama like I so very am. And this was just basically a soap opera for 12 episodes with Lady Gaga and a whole bunch of other people, and it was like, for the remaining cast, like the cast that's been there from the beginning, I think it's the best acting any of them have done throughout the entirety of American Horror Story. If you jumped off the boat in Coven like a lot of people did,
Yep.
I actually enjoyed Freak Show as well. I thought it was way better than people said it was, but you could skip Freak Show and just watch Hotel, and it's just like juicy melodrama of like, I love him, but I can't have him. And it's just like so over the top. And it was, I loved the hell out of it. And it was basically, like, it's the most R-rated FX could go. And it's just like crazy violent, tons of sex, tons of violence, so much just emotion just dripping out of the screen. Like, Chewie walked in, she's like, so are you still enjoying this? I'm like, oh no, I fucking love this. This is great. And then I got to the first episode of Roanoke, and I'm like, I'll pass. But Hotel, totally worth it.
What a roller coaster of a series.
Oh, yeah.
You could just skip entire seasons and just be like, okay.
I think that's the beauty of some of these anthology ideas, like, except for Apocalypse, which ties them all together.
Apparently very loosely.
Oh, cool.
Because like even Hotel has a character from Coven in it and a character from Murder House. Actually, two characters from Murder House. So like they're all kind of loosely tied together.
Okay.
But they all have their own stories, and like I don't think any of them are bad, and they definitely got better with the whole like let's not rape everybody, and like that gets out of there as the show goes on. And
That's good.
Did I ever tell you about the time that I was at Comic-Con and I saw the panel that was combined Screen Queens American Horror Story, and Kathy Bates was fucking blitz off her ass, and she just kept making jokes to Jamie Lee Curtis and then leaning over and yelling down the table, basically implying that she wanted to bone Matt Bomer.
Can't blame her there. That's a handsome guy.
It was really amazing. She was so drunk, and it was just terrific.
Nice.
I love Kathy Bates. I know she only has one more season left in American Horror Story, so which is why I'll probably watch Roanoke, just because I love Kathy Bates. That's it for me.
I watched a fascinating docuseries on Netflix called Wild Wild Country.
Chewie loved that.
My brain was like, bah! The whole time I was watching it. It's, if you don't know what it is about the sannyasins, the Bhagwan Rajneesh. Was in like this Indian guru, and he started a compound or a little commune in Oregon and near this really tiny town of people who did not want them there. And then the story just went the fuck off the rails. Like, this place is crazy. There's poison. There's like intrigue. Basically, what was fascinating about this whole series is that every single person in this story is terrible. They are all terrible people. And but I'm sure some of the people who lived on the commune are good, but all the major players in the story are terrible. The townspeople are terrible. The leaders of the commune are terrible. The fucking the Bhagwan is terrible. The people trying to shut them down are terrible. Everyone is terrible, but everyone thinks they are a fucking hero. Every single terrible person in that story thinks they are such a good person, and they're doing the right thing, and they're righteous, and they're not. And that's why it's really great watching it, because I spent the whole time like yelling at everyone on my television. television and being very like, but constantly having my emotions turn. Like sometimes she'll be like, "Oh my god, those townspeople are being assholes. Why the fuck are you doing that? They're just trying to live." And then the next episode, you're like, "What the fuck are you doing? Why are you antagonizing those townspeople?" Oh my god, it's so great, guys.
What about you? Where have you been doing?
I had a little extra time to watch another movie. So I watched a horror movie called As Above, So Below, where they basically...
That did not look good. How was it?
It was interesting. I would say it's on par with any movie. Like, it's what you would expect from a movie of that kind, based off the advertisements. There's no surprises.
Okay.
From what you've seen, if you've seen the trailers, it's kind of what it is. I liked some of the imagery that they were going for, and they kind of took a Dante's Inferno spin on things. So it was a little bit more intelligent about that, and had a more of an interesting kind of premise as you got deeper in. And the imagery as they're delving down in these catacombs and also hell, it was interesting, kind of the imagery that they chose for it.
Yeah.
But it's also found footage, so it follows
pass.
follows all those tropes of found footage. And if you've seen a found footage, you know what to expect.
Does somebody drop the camera at one point and lay down in front of it and then get dragged away from the camera?
Yes. But there was once they get kind of deep into the bowels of hell, as it were, there was some creepy imagery that I appreciated. Like at one point they kind of like freak out because the faces start slowly coming out of the stone, and then break out as people and then start attacking them. That was just kind of cool. But then there was like mouths that were coming out of the ground and biting at their feet. And so like there was like these weird kind of hellish visuals that I thought were kind of cool.
Fairly unique.
But yeah, if you want something that's expected, kind of an expected entity, with some fun visuals, I'd go for that.
Might give it a shot. Tom, what about you?
I guess I'm going to talk about well, first off, I'm going to plug Graham's show, The Venture Brothers, because I've been watching the new season, and I found it particularly enjoying. I don't really know what really more to say about it, but I think you should check it out.
It's pretty great.
Yeah, the progression of the characters from season 1 to season 7. I threw on a season 1 episode. Even just the animation, the art style, everything seems like it's a different show, but it's the same show still.
Oh yeah,
like at its heart.
And doing the show notes for you guys for it, it's been funny because there's only so many times you can go, this episode is my favorite, or this is a really good episode. Before it's like, I'm just gonna start copying and pasting the last show notes because it's been that good. Like,
it's a good fucking show.
Yeah,
man.
It is.
Check out Venture Bros, a Venture Brothers podcast. All right, should we start talking Hereditary?
Yes.
I'm going to call it Hereditary.
Hilarity, Hereditary. So this is a movie came out earlier this year. It made pretty good money. I thought it was going to make more, and then it didn't because there's a lot of like, I don't remember which film festival it opened at, but it opened and people were like, it's the scariest movie of all time, which is usually like a guaranteed 100 million movie. Actually, let me look up. I'm curious to see how much it actually
Scariest movie of all time.
Yeah,
that's a lofty claim.
I enjoyed it, and there were parts of it that were very scary, but
I feel like that's kind of, and we don't necessarily have to get into it because it's kind of a boring conversation at this point, but that's kind of the culture now. It's either the greatest thing of all time or the worst.
It's the Donald Trump,
yeah,
where everything's a superlative.
Exactly. So like when people see a decent horror film, they say it's the greatest horror film of all time, and it's like, all right, well, we'll get there. Yeah, so the production budget is N/A, so that's interesting, and then it ended up making worldwide $79 million. So it did okay. I'm guessing all those sets were built from scratch. So I'm guessing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That wasn't location?
We'll get into it. I watched a lot of the special features on this one. Like there's this one. It really reminds me of the Babadook, but only in like the design aspect.
Yeah, because I was about to be like, it can't cost that much because they mostly shot in the house. Oh, but if they had to build the house, geez.
Yeah.
Maybe they could sell the house and someone could live in it after.
Yeah.
But yeah, critically, it was through the roof. Fan-wise, it was somewhere in the middle, and I think I'm in between the both. But we'll get into that after we do a breakdown. Tom, are you ready to do this?
I'm ready to break down emotionally.
This could be a tough one to do in 30 seconds because it depends on like which theory of what happened you buy into. So. If you agree with me, I'll say you passed, and if you don't, you're going to fail. Just so you know.
That's
unfair.
Yeah, it's a little biased, right?
Yeah.
I would assume the case though with you.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so here we go. Hereditary in 30 seconds. Here we go.
All right. The matriarch of the family dies. She's kind of like a cult worshiper, and she kind of imbues the soul of a god into her youngest daughter or her granddaughter. Some shenanigans happen. The granddaughter dies in a crazy scene, and then the cult kind of starts attacking the family, and winds up somehow killing the family and getting the soul of the god Palamon into the eldest child, which is, I guess, their ultimate goal, so that he can be reborn. Rule the world.
That's it. And you agree with me, so we're good. That's a pass all around.
I think I got like an extra second buffer in there, so maybe
You
I failed a
did.
bit briefly, but
Yeah, I'll give you an 80% pass.
I'll take that. I'll take that.
That's a solid B.
Just cut me off at like 29 seconds and
Yeah.
then, like, the god Palamon.
Yeah, so before we dive too deep into this thing, I want to do a hot take around the table, just because it was so, like, the fans were, like, the people who saw it were so meh, and the critics were so woohoo! I want to see where we are before we start discussing it. Where'd you guys end on it? I'd say, like, 3 out of 4 for me.
Yeah, I'd agree. I was
Yeah.
like, I was going in with a little bit of hype, unfair probably, but like, I was like, this is solid, and it was more like they were saying it was great. I thought it was fine.
Yeah.
It was good.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It wasn't the trailer at all.
No.
The trailer made it look like it was just wall to wall scary shit, and like 50% of the movie is just people dealing with grief.
Yeah.
But overall, I actually kind of liked it a lot because I'm not that big a horror movie fan. So it was only scary for a short amount of time, and I can handle that.
Yeah.
Well, and it's hard to describe it as great when it, like, I wasn't expecting some of the familial, like, tragedy emotion thing.
Yeah.
And it was taking me down some paths that generally kind of, like, sour is not the right word, but turns it from, like, being really great to being, like, good, because I'm spending more of the time, like, feeling
Yeah.
and dealing with negative
How
personal emotions.
Dare they make a movie?
that might make the
makes
movie
you feel-
better,
I
in
thought
my
it made it
opinion.
better,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That time will tell. Like, we'll see.
Yeah.
Because it was in that weird area of, like, opening up things, and then
Sure.
like also not being mind blowing at the same time. Like, I don't know. It's
Sure.
So I've settled on good.
That's kind of like well, I'll get into that. Tom, what about you?
I would agree, but I kind of have the opposite thought. I thought the case study of human grief through family tragedy, I thought that was like the most compelling part of the movie to me. And when they got into the supernatural elements as much, it lost me a little bit, but that's because I'm not a big horror guy. But,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was all well done.
Episode we've had you on, because we only have you on for horror movies
Well,
for some reason.
Because I'm analytical and I might be an anti-opinion.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, stylistically and production-wise and acting, I think everyone did a great job on this. It's just certain things just aren't my cup of bag
Sure.
or cup of tea, as actually.
Cup of bag.
Cup of bag.
Cup of bags.
I'm gonna dot the T's and cross the I's. Yep.
Dot those J's and X those D's.
Yep.
Yeah, I think you guys are pretty much spot on. Like the thing with me though is, if you want to talk about like the grief case study, it's all stuff that I thought was done better in Babadook. So it's like,
Yeah.
like that's not necessarily like a knock against this movie. I mean, there's all movies are varying quality, but it's one of those things where like I feel like my major issue with this movie is that everything that it does well, I've seen done better in a different movie. Not necessarily all in the same package, though. So it's like, if I want to see a movie about grief, I could go watch this. If I want to see a movie about a cult, I could go watch that. But if I want to see it all in one place, this is one of the first ones I've seen that try to do like all of it at one time. So like it's kind of a knock against it and kind of a celebration for it of like,
Look what it tried to do.
yeah, like this movie swung for the fucking fences.
Yeah.
And a little bit about the filmmaking, if you guys didn't look into it. So the whole movie, Toni Collette's character is into making miniatures, and she's like a famed miniature maker. Like she has an art show in, I think, Chicago. I don't remember exactly where they said it was, where all they want to see is her miniatures because she's so good at it. And she makes dollhouses. So they wanted the set to feel like a dollhouse. So to do that, they had to build the set as if it was a huge dollhouse. So all the walls are removable, all like the furniture is super light and can just be knocked around. Like they wanted it to look and feel like a dollhouse at all times. And I thought that was genius because it really helped set the tone of the whole movie.
Did they build the house like that dollhouse in the opening shot where they're zooming in, like with all different
it all
layers
has
on top of
removable
each
walls.
other?
Yep.
Okay. Wow.
So that's why, like, when you see like their living room, like the entry room, like you never see that one wall except for like a few scenes where they just had to fly in that wall. Mm-hmm. It's because it's just an open set and they're just cruising around. I'm like, I thought that was just,
That would be cool space to shoot in.
yeah. And Toni Collette said after filming it that the director was the most prepared director she had ever worked with in her career.
That.
It's like, wow, that is a compliment.
Yes. that means your crew is probably very happy.
You
Yeah.
can't see it because the headphones, my ears perked up.
Yeah.
Prepared director.
What?
You mean people got out on time?
Yeah.
Probably.
They knew what they were doing ahead of time?
Wow.
They
Yeah.
They
planned.
probably didn't shoot rehearsals.
Yeah, like that's just
Right.
impressive all around. And I think that's kind of where I come down to in this movie is that it's impressive all around. Where I might not love it as much as people did, I still think I was thoroughly impressed from beginning to end. But let's start like kind of jumping around here. I want to start with the girl. What do you guys think of the girl, the Matilda from Broadway? It's our first movie. She was on Broadway as Matilda though, so good.
She had
interesting.
she had an old lady vibe from minute one. Like
Yeah.
it's freaky.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
it's like, ugh.
What a great sound choice.
Yeah.
All around.
So innocuous, but also creepy as it builds throughout the rest of the movie.
Yeah, because it's one of those things where it's like it's a tick at first and then it's creepy.
Yeah.
Right, and it's one you'll talk about. Like I'm trying to think of The Conjuring, where they had to clap the clap,
Yeah.
and it's like there's those specific sounds, or like the of like older movies.
The most iconic of all time.
Yeah. I was trying not to distract from this movie, but just like those iconic sounds, this would count among them. You will have that with you.
Yeah, when you hear somebody click their tongue like that, if you've seen this movie, you'll go like, "Oh, Hereditary."
I do it a lot, and I have to stop now because
It's also very smart because it gives us, since we're talking about a body jumping like supernatural spirit, you allow that click as an indication that it's in the body. Like
Yeah.
it's a really good shorthand for letting us understand what happened.
And it's one of those where it's not so on the nose that it feels like it's insulting to the viewer. It's like it's just perfect enough where it's like, so when he stands up at the end of the movie after
Yeah.
like being basically murdered and thrown out of his house,
He was scared to death.
he was scared to death. Yeah. As soon as that happened, he stands up and goes, it's like, oh, he did die.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
He's not going to save the day.
Nope. He saved
Well,
the
maybe
day in
he will.
Jumanji. He can't do it twice.
Well, maybe he will save the day for the worshippers and make the world like they want it.
That could
Yeah,
be.
he did save the day for someone.
Yes.
Not the right someone, but someone.
Saved it for the villains.
That is one of the things I thought was really interesting about the structure of this movie. Is I started thinking partway through like how it's basically a two-hander. We're following Toni Collette, and then we're following Peter. I don't know the actor's name, but like Peter, and I feel weird using an actor's name, but also a character name, and not picking one. But the mom, and some of the time we're following him, and it would have been really easy to make it his story, and he's like being stalked the whole time, and we could have been following the son the whole time, and we weren't, because in a way, I get why, because actually most of his decisions are very passive. So it was better to follow her, watch her try to make active decisions, and then watch how it like gets to him. But it was just interesting to watch structurally that he wasn't the main character, even though most of the movie was about him.
Yeah,
Well,
and then
they
switching,
make
and then
mention of that.
switching, and then switching to him at the end,
Yeah.
making him the main character at the end.
But
It was like when the spirit entered him. I thought it was a very interesting way
Yeah.
that they
I
did
don't
that.
think he was ever the main character. Like he might have been the point of view for a moment, and I don't think necessarily. I don't think Toni Collette was the main character either. Like I don't really. I feel like it wanted to be an ensemble. Like never
Yeah.
really fully settled on either Peter or. I'm just gonna look up their names. It's Alex Wolff is the actor. I remember because I hired a PA named Alex Wolff, and it wasn't this one.
We're continuing on that theme of people whose names are also other people's names.
Yep.
Exactly.
Annie is Toni Collette's
Okay,
character.
right.
So
Okay.
I don't feel like it was ever really Annie or Peter. I think it was kind of the both of them.
Yeah.
But there's a scene in the beginning of the movie that I thought it really kind of set for me like, oh, okay, so I know where this movie's going. It's when Peter's in high school and they're doing a class on Greek mythology and they're talking about I think it was the Iliad, was it? I don't remember exactly which book it was.
It was the story of, I think, the sacrifice of the daughters so that they could get to Troy quicker with the
could be it.
winds.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that would be the only.
Yeah. And they mentioned basically like, is it a tragedy because none of their decisions mattered? Like they were on these rails from the get-go and it didn't matter what they do, this is where they're headed. And they're like, yeah, it's more of a tragedy because it meant that they had fate and they had no choice. And they were, I even wrote down as my quote.
Yeah, that basically set up the entire movie for me.
Yeah, it sets the tone of the whole thing where basically, they're pawns caught in a horrible machine with no choice. And it's like, yep. So now I know this family is fucked from the get-go.
Yeah.
Damn.
Like the grandma made sure, and that's why it's hereditary. It's in their blood. They have no choice no matter what they do. Sooner or later, someone in this family is going to be a vessel for that god. They have no choice. And
And that's interesting because that is very Greek because the Greek chorus always told you the ending of the story before they even started.
yeah, this movie really kind of followed that theory.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I thought that was a really cool thing. And I thought it worked really well. Like it didn't do enough where it spoiled the story, but it did enough where it's like, okay, I know what I'm sitting down for now. It's definitely a tragedy. No one's making out of this fucking thing alive.
And they made it kind of easy to skim over that beginning part too.
Yeah.
So that way, like when the rewatch will be really good for me too. I think on this.
Yeah,
Just because I now that I hear what you were saying about it, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I do recall those details, but I kind of glossed over that in the beginning.
Yeah.
You didn't know what was important at the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Because this is just a throwaway. Oh, they're in a class. So yeah.
When all the other sounds died down and we listened to the teacher talking for a second, I'm like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing here.
Yeah.
Was that the teacher?
attention.
I thought that was one of the other students like trying to answer, but I was
The
confused there
teacher,
because
the teacher asked
nobody
the
raised a
question,
hand.
and then 2 people answered it. Well,
Yeah.
the one kid answered like a jackass. Is it more of a tragedy? Yeah. Why? Because.
Yeah, and then the
Fucking
second one
high schoolers.
felt like an EDR line. I wasn't sure
Yeah.
if it was the teacher or another student.
I
or,
think it was supposed to be the student.
Yeah.
I don't know. Doesn't matter.
It still served its purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's where he was looking at that girl's butt, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were meant to pay attention to that
Yeah.
and think that relationship was the big deal of the scene when it wasn't. And boy, did that relationship not go anywhere.
It
but
went nowhere fast.
That's my high school.
Back to the girl for a second. Her death scene caught me way the fuck off guard.
Yep.
Yeah.
I gasped.
I never watched the trailer. I never looked up what the movie's about. The first time I saw a single frame of this movie was when I watched it 2 days ago for this podcast. Was that death in the trailer? Did you know that she died?
I don't think so.
Because I know she's on all the posters. She's in all the ad marketing.
The trailer didn't do anything like that.
Okay.
But I had, film Twitter and all that had mentioned like, as they've watched this movie, they've been like, there's one moment where it's like, oh my God, I'm like, okay, well, whatever. And I forgot about that.
Yeah.
And that must have been the moment because I gasped and I was like wide-eyed for about a good minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes.
Yeah. That had an audible like, like, oh, fuck. Because it's one of those.
Like, maybe she's okay.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like they set her up to feel kind of like we're
Important?
Yeah, not even just important. Like we're trying to figure out, is Annie or Peter the main character? While I was watching it, because the posters are all just Toni Collette and Millie. I forget her last name, and it's like, okay, so I'm guessing the girl's the main child character and Toni Collette's the main adult character.
Well, and up to this
there
point,
goes her head.
And up to this point, the brother Peter,
Yeah.
has seemed like relatively unimportant. Like it seemed like Toni Collette and her, based off the posters, like you said,
Yeah.
the advertising. But he just seemed like, oh, here's a kid just looking at a girl's ass in high school and just kind of whatever. He's going to be so tangential to this.
Yeah.
And like I didn't even know there was a brother. 'Cause that's kind of going
the
into
trailer
this.
I didn't know he was a brother either. Also, because he doesn't really look like. Well, I guess you could say look kind of like Gabriel Byrne, but
Kind of.
But his
With the color
features
correction, yes.
his features don't look like them at all.
No.
I thought he was adopted, to be honest.
Yeah.
If you Google "is Peter adopted," it'll fill in Hereditary for you.
Oh.
So a lot of people had that question.
But yeah, so in the trailers, I didn't know he was related, and also all you see in the trailers is him just getting attacked by things. So
Yeah.
you're just like, oh, here's like somebody's boyfriend who's gonna get bad things happening to them. So yeah, you didn't expect at all for him to be such a major part of the story.
And he really is. Like he I was gonna say he really moves the story forward, but no one does. It's
Yeah.
the story
has the
moves
story
the story
forward.
forward. Which is,
He's super passive. He spends the entire movie rightly, but moping.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean it makes sense that he's moping.
He just accidentally murdered his sister.
Accidentally knocked his sister's
Well,
head
that's kind of
off.
interesting. That's kind of interesting then, because you could almost say everyone in their grief is very passive.
Well, that's the whole point.
Yeah, yeah.
Everyone is
Yeah.
there's no proactive
is-
character except for the grandma who doesn't have a single frame in
Yeah.
this movie, and then as like a vision to the daughter.
And then like
she's
in the
the only-
casket, like they see her in a casket briefly, like
and
5 seconds.
And the I forget the actress's name. The girl who always plays the evil woman, who's like the
Aunt Lydia?
Yeah, she just don't ever trust that woman. She
Yeah.
pops up in a movie like don't trust
Like
her.
immediately, I just
Yeah.
like, sorry, Aunt Lydia. As soon as she says it, like for the rest of her life.
Great actress, but yeah, just
God, I bet people say that to her everywhere she goes.
yeah.
People are constantly apologizing to her.
I can't trust you.
but beyond her, like she's very proactive, but she's a part of the cult. But moving on to the cult a little bit, I think this is where I'll get into my major issue with the movie. Is like this movie clearly not borrows, but is influenced by a lot of other older horror movies.
Yeah.
And as soon as I caught on there was a cult, I'm like, oh, kind of like Rosemary's Baby. Oh, a lot like Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah.
Oh, it keeps being like, oh, here's a whole bunch of people waiting for this person to be. So this is just Rosemary's Baby. And as soon as I clued into that, I could kind of guess every beat from there on out, and it didn't.
Oh, absolutely.
It didn't spoil it at all for me. It was still a very enjoyable ride, but it's one of those things where it's like if you knew the ending to Sixth Sense, it doesn't make it a bad movie. It just means like, all right, so some of the mystery's taken out of it. And as soon as I clued into Rosemary's Baby, I'm like, oh, okay, I know what this movie is.
It does give you a little bit more time to kind of pick apart as you get into the ending. Where in the
Sure,
beginning, you're
yeah.
always kind of like you're dealing with the grief, wondering what's out there in the periphery, what's going on, what's this unease I feel. You're always kind of wondering, and you don't have a lot of time to just like pick apart what's going on in the scene. But once you kind of know, like you said, like
Yeah.
okay, it's going to be this Rosemary's Baby thing. Then now suddenly you're starting to kind of analyze it as you're watching. So that's why it's like the ending is good. I like kind of what they chose for it, but it does diminish its effectiveness.
Yeah.
A little bit. Like it just because you're kind of
it's like
doing predictive text on it.
Okay, so this kid's the devil or whatever pagan deity this is going to be, but there's
going to be these people up there in the treehouse at some point. There's going to be these people who you've never really seen before. They're going to be real, but not real.
But they've been hinted at, like they were at the funeral, and it's like, oh yeah, all these things are there, and it's like, okay, I can see where you're borrowing from, and I don't have a problem with that. Like if you're going to borrow from the best. And Rosemary's Baby is arguably one of the best horror films ever made.
Yeah.
Does it make me dislike the movie? No, but it did kind of take away parts of it from me. What about you guys? Like I've been leading the charge on this one. What stood out to you guys?
There were some really scary parts at the end. Like, I know you said you weren't that scared, but I literally shrieked in my apartment this morning when I finished watching this movie because I watched half of it last night and then half of it this morning. But there's like the scene where he's wandering around and looking and he sees his dad's charred body and then like he's like, you're waiting, like, wait, where'd she go? And all of a sudden she jumps out at him. I just went, just like screamed. She scared the shit out of me. And then like I totally get why he jumped out the window. At that point, they terrorized him so much that he's just like, that's it. He's done.
Yeah.
And he just watched it, like his sister's head came off. His dad was burned alive. Like he just watched his mom saw her own neck.
While doing her best impersonation of Spider-Man.
Yeah, right? He was just like anybody else would. I don't know what else you would do at that point other than just jump out the fucking window.
It was very effective at the thinking you see something in a corner or the doorway that I haven't seen in very many movies.
Yeah.
Like the anytime that someone was like, am I seeing something? And they look at it, I was like, God, am I seeing something?
The one that
she was up on the wall behind him,
Yeah.
and you don't see it at first, and then you go, wait, oh my God.
And
Yeah.
It's like
How
a trick
long
of
has she
the
been
lighting.
there?
Yeah.
And props to, I mean, like, you don't normally have like someone like Toni Collette or like the main lead woman that you would have in the movie be doing that stuff.
Yeah.
And the physicality that her physicality really stood out to me in this movie.
Yeah.
Like both the transformation from the grief into like this horrific kind of like spider kind of skeletal like freaky thing.
And I thought what they did with Toni Collette, specifically in the way of grief, is something they've done in many movies. But I love Toni Collette. Like she's one of my favorite actors ever. And she did it so well of grief turned into anger, and like you don't see that done well in a lot of movies. A lot of times it's just somebody getting drunk and angry, and she didn't do the drunk and angry thing. She was just mad. And she was mad all the time, and she didn't really have a place to put that anger. So like when she's poked and prodded, she'll explode at you because it's anger grief. And like
the scene at the dinner table with,
like the
with
scene
her
at the dinner
child.
table.
Which I found so fascinating because I was expecting, like, I guess we're conditioned to expect this, but like after the accident happened, it was very fascinating to me that he just drove away. He's just like, because he's so in shock.
And
and I was expecting an immediate like blow up from that. Like, how you're so irresponsible, and instead it just festered, and no one brought it up, and everyone was pretending everything was fine until that scene when it all came to the surface, and you're like, okay, that actually is pretty realistic, I think.
Yeah, that one was really realistic, and then her nightmares were all very realistic. Of like the son, just like, why are you afraid of me? I never want to be your mother.
Yeah,
and it's like, ooh, and like it's just all those things that are just like tied into like losing a loved one. That like all the things you want to say to people that you know you shouldn't because you know your feelings are just fucked up right now, and you can just see it on Toni Collette's face throughout the entire movie of like, this is everything I want to say, but I can't because I'm trying to be a good mom, even though I don't want to be.
I mean, really, they all should have gone to therapy. Like,
they should have been in therapy a long time ago.
And man,
especially considering all the disabilities and the mental things and the history in their family.
And she can just say, like, there's so much she can do with her face. In terms of this, everything we've just said, like, she's able to convey so much of that just in her face and how she just exists on the screen.
Yeah.
And even when she's not on the screen.
Too.
Yeah.
When she did that blood-curdling scream when she finds out about her daughter being dead, and like it's just the camera's lingering on Peter. And
you
like,
don't even... Oh, it was so good.
It's very well done.
And like that's what I need to look up the director's name because
we are praising him, but we just don't know his name.
We're praising him, just not giving him.
Hey, dude, you're good.
You're good, Ari Aster.
Or do that. I don't know.
Ari, I think he's a guy.
Yeah.
The choices that he made were like bold in the way of usually you'd think mother lost her child, you'd want to see the mother in the grief because that's where the emotional punch would be. Mm-hmm. But staying with Peter in that total like PTSD, like I can't believe this happened. I'm not even sure if it happened.
Is this real? If I wake up,
Yeah.
maybe if I wake up.
Yeah, and like just hearing her outside with the fucking decapitated body of her daughter in the car is just like, holy shit.
And you
like,
you get to see her a little bit. They got cut back to her at
In
a certain
her
point.
room on the floor,
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
I want to
Like-
die, I want to die.
Yeah.
Which they shot in a really wide shot. I thought that was
Yeah.
really interesting.
It's a very Rosemary Baby.
And you also, but you also get Gabriel Byrne. Gabriel Byrne is. I'm sorry, I didn't want to jump ahead, but like
No, let's go
Gabriel
for it.
Byrne was really interesting the way he was used because he's not usually like such a secondary character in a story, and he was so quiet
Yeah.
and so reserved and just like. Everyone else was having all these emotions around him, and you could see him just sort of being like, well, I've got to be stoic. He's not allowed to grieve because everyone else is so busy wallowing in their grief.
And the movie
that
lets
was
him though. Like the movie gets
Yeah.
to they let him in the car for a brief moment, and it was so effective just because he's like so held together by barely anything.
Yeah. And the other thing I want to bring up about Ari is apparently he wrote this movie based on his own family in a way, which I hope is very loosely based because otherwise, sorry, Ari, that sucks.
So is he confessing that he is, in fact,
yeah.
some kind of ancient god?
Guys, I'm Paimon. Get rid of me, please.
He and his family believed for a long time that they had a curse, and he wanted to make a movie about a family that is also cursed. And I thought that was kind of an interesting idea. And when you know that that symbol that was above the decapitated grandma, like if you know to look for that symbol, it's all over the fucking movie.
It's on the telephone pole.
Yeah, it's on the
I
telephone
noticed
pole that hits her. Like
It's on her necklace when she's in the coffin.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and I imagine that there's more places where you weren't really paying attention where they
Yeah,
showed them
definitely.
too, and this would be an exciting rewatch.
It is, yeah, and it's one of those ones where it's like the filmmaking is so on point for all the things we've said so far, like letting the dad kind of be the quiet, like stoic grief, even though you can tell he's bursting at the seams, the quiet, angry grief, the son who's PTSD, like all these choices mixed into each other, like it's just such good filmmaking that we just don't really get that often.
Well, and I think
especially in horror movies.
That's an important distinction in like movies like this, that like horror movies, that like this is what makes it good. Like
Yeah.
not necessarily how creepy it can get or the demon part or the plot. The plot is, for me, it's important that they're able to do that with these characters.
Yeah.
And that there's so much character work done with their like mental state and how they cope with grief and all that. It's just, that's such an important part. That's why the end can be effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to connect to the characters before they die, or else what's the point of watching?
Yeah, and I think this is it's another one of the things that I think the movie does just a little bit off of. I agree with Emily on that. I forget the actor's name, the dad.
Gabriel Byrne.
Yeah, he's such a good actor that I like by trying to keep him stoic and to the side. I feel like we might have missed out on that connection just a little bit.
Well, because yeah, of course, when he's charred at the end, it doesn't quite have the punch because you're like, oh, she's gonna throw it in there. He's probably gonna burn. Okay, he burns. Fine.
Yeah.
Whereas like every transformation of everyone else, every death or re-becoming, like hits you.
Yeah, he's the only one that's kind of like just for show. Like oh, he burst into flames. That was shocking.
That
but-
feels the most
I was
cheesy out
confused.
of them.
Yeah.
Like he's like, oh, he's there. He burns, and he's just kind of neatly placed on the ground with his hands up, carbonite
We
style.
probably could have used a scene between him and Peter that showed some intimacy. Like,
Yeah,
that's
just
what we were missing.
or Peter or him and Charlie, just like
Yeah.
anything, just something to just give him just a little bit extra because I feel like
Yeah, he could have easily. They could have had. Maybe they did, and they cut it. But they could have
Yeah.
had a scene of him comforting Peter, trying to like, let after the dinner scene would have been great to be like,
Yeah.
look, your mom's grieving. She didn't mean what she said. Some a moment
Yeah.
because we almost never get a scene with just the two of them.
no, and it's one of those where they went for realism over like filmmaking, and it's like sometimes you got to let the realism go and just like give the audience a little bit more because they did what that dad would have done, which is he just pats him on the hand like, hey, it's okay, I'm here for you. Let's go back to eating, and it's like okay, that would be real life, but I don't want to watch real life right now. I'll watch the horror
yeah.
movie.
And after such a explosive outburst from Toni Collette's character Annie, and that moment being so charged,
Yeah.
we're bought in. We're bought in like 100% into the scene now.
Yeah.
You can kind of shift that and play for the theme more so than the realism. I feel like that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be fine. I would be fine with it being not realistic then if it meant more of like to see that connection.
And it would have been something as easy as just like the dad just going, she doesn't blame you, right? And then just have the kid stand up and walk away. Like it would just been like one little thing just to give him a little bit more like human, not just extra character. Because I kind of feel like that's where he borders on. Is just slightly to just we need another body.
In
this
a
movie.
way, though, that's how everyone in the family seems to see him.
That's
like,
true,
She's
yeah.
losing her shit on the floor and talk about dying, and he's also grieving. He's also lost his child.
Yeah.
But he's just being stoic and comforting her as if his feelings are irrelevant. I think that's why he starts to lose his shit at the end. He's just like,
Yeah.
what the like, why? I also lost a child, but he's
Yeah.
not allowed to express any grief.
I also lost a child, and why are we doing a seance right now?
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
There were a few times where I kind of forgot his relationship to everyone just because the movie made a very concerted point to be like, he's such a background person.
Yeah.
Whereas like he's the husband, he's the father. Oh, I had to remind myself. There was one point where I was like, who? Like after coming back to him, I was like, what is his? Oh, he's the dad. He's the dad. Like the movie is like interested in keeping us away from being like empathizing.
Did you guys watch Sharp Objects?
No.
I only watched the first episode.
Because there was also that's also a story about dealing with a child who was killed,
Yeah.
and the mother sucks the air out of every room she's in and is constantly publicly grieving. And it happened a long time ago, but she's still just making it all about her. And there is a scene finally where the husband just loses his shit and it reminds her that you're not the only one who lost a kid.
Yeah.
Everything is not about you. So I thought this was very interesting how it mirrored that very
Yeah.
different way, but there are some similarities.
And we just never got to that point of I also lost a kid. Like we
Yeah.
butt up to it a few times, especially during the seance. Like that's really where he's like, I'm trying to help you with your grief. I'm doing everything I can. I'm holding your hand. We're watching the glass move. I don't want to do this anymore. Like,
And
this-
clearly Peter is freaking the fuck out. And
Of
she is not
course he
even
is.
noticing.
Oh yeah, and I love that. I need to look that actor's name up too. Because if I had just seen Jumanji, I would assume I'll never see this kid again. Because he was fine in Jumanji. He
He
didn't
was
really
only in it for a few minutes.
he didn't really have much to do. And then I watched this one. It's like, oh, holy shit, he's a really good actor,
Yeah.
Alex Wolff again. I liked it was either his choice or the director's choice. I don't know which. To let him just do full on baby sobs.
Yeah. I thought that was so good, and
Like-
it directly addresses what we were saying earlier about the father.
Yeah.
Like they gave him that such cartoonish cry, which effectively made it feel real.
Yeah, it's one of those it's so childish in nature that it'd be embarrassing to be seen crying like that. Yeah. Like especially as a teenage boy, you would not want to see that. And he does it 2 or 3 times throughout the movie, and it's like that is it's just such a raw oh, that kid's definitely fucked up right now. Yeah. Because if you were to hear that, you'd be like, oh god, that kid's 16. He shouldn't be crying like that. He has to be super upset.
Yeah.
And he's doing that while his mom's trying to summon the ghost of the sister that he killed. It's that's a lot of emotion for that
And I
kid.
mean, and the way that she died, you'd never recover from that. You
No.
can move on. You can live your life, but you would need to be in therapy forever after having seen that happen. I mean, you just never.
I mean, you just break it down. If you haven't, for some reason, if you're listening to this incredibly spoilery podcast and you haven't seen the movie, the kid is forced to take his sister to a party where he's trying to hook up with a hot girl in his class by giving her very good weed, which is what he said. But he's a high schooler, so we know shit weed. But so he has to take his daughter, who's too young to go to or his sister, who's too young to go to the party, who's allergic to nuts, who he forces to go wait in line for cake that's chock filled with nuts. She goes into she starts not being able to breathe, so he freaks out, high out of his mind, tries to race her to a hospital. On his way there, she gets her head knocked off by a telephone pole.
because something's in the middle of the road, but
There's a deer in the middle of the road.
Okay.
But if you want to go into the deep conspiracy theory, like a lot of us do, this was all orchestrated.
especially if the symbol was on the telephone pole.
Yeah, this was all and I really like that. Especially going the Greek chorus and all this. This was all out of their hands, and it just sucks that they're on this train. but-
Although, if he had been carrying an EpiPen, none of this would have happened.
Yeah.
Yep.
As someone with a nut allergy, it's having to not having one for expenses reasons.
Yeah.
It's there's a panic. What a 1-2 punch for me watching this. Here's a nut allergy, and we're gonna blast her head off.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, I've never. I have a very mild nut allergy, but I've had it once where I had trouble breathing. It's freaky as fuck.
Yeah, and I've reached to where skin's changing color. I've gotten to a very deep point where it's do or die, get to the hospital sort of thing. And both when the sister has that, and then when the brother re-experiences it, in the high school in the classroom, it was just a weird sense of PSD or traumatic reliving of those moments where it's you tearing at your throat and it bulges and you can't breathe. Your face I viscerally remembered all those times.
Why do you think the brother relived that moment? What
think
was causing that?
Didn't she? For me, I thought it was she visited. She visited his body. and started possessing. Like it was like an attempt, because anytime that weird flashy light happened, like I think that happened then too, the weird flashing lights.
Yep.
And he started kind of receiving it like a signal. It seemed like that's my vibe on it.
The way that I had the movie broken down for me via multiple YouTube behind the scenes stuff that I watched, because I got really into how they made this movie. And I like that Ari Aster was like, I hate movies of what was the ending? Like he's like, I hate that. He's like, so what you see happened. That is like, that's not to be inferred or this. He's like,
Hereditary explained in 30 minutes.
Yeah, it's like there might be things of like, why was the deer in the middle of the road? Like those are the mysteries I'm okay with. But the endings I want to be clear cut. So what you see happened. Yeah. And the way that like people kind of explained it was because they have it in the movie that the god can only overtake a male host. And Charlie was supposed to be a boy. And that's why she's kind of got like a face. And
she's got a boy's name. And like, so the god is in her at all times, but he can't manifest because he's in a girl. So they need to figure out how to get the girl into the boy. So as soon as she dies, the spirit's just kind of floating around now, but it is that deity.
Oh, there's some kind of story in there about gender dysmorphia. I don't
right?
know.
Yeah, there's something in there.
Yeah, maybe if she just had a sex change, everyone else would have survived.
She could have just waited a few more years.
Yeah.
But so like, I think the idea there is that so once she dies and the spirit is just kind of loose until it can overtake Alex Wolff's character, I think it might be kind of, that'd be like the driving, like fucking with him force. So like, they're trying to break him down so that he can be possessed. So how did your sister die? She died in the middle of a nut allergy attack. We're going to make that happen to you.
Yeah.
It's the long road
and then,
to answer your question.
Well, and then the end kind of pays that off too, because that light can still go in him, like it went in him with ease.
Yeah.
So it's like, why couldn't it have gone in him with ease at other times too?
Because
like,
he had to be weakened.
Yeah.
I think that was also in the little book that she read, that he had to be weak.
And that's pretty much every demon movie ever. That if you're going to get possessed, you have to get beaten down. That's why the demons always torture you for so long.
And what better way to be beaten down than a boring class in school? I mean, I'm kind of joking there, but anytime he's been in school, he's always been like most receptive.
Yeah, that's true.
Like just wearied,
especially when like he's dozing and then it takes him over and smashes his face in the desk.
Can you imagine trying to go to school after that? You shouldn't be going to school again for like the rest of the year.
I love the scene with him and his friends trying to act normal, getting high under the bleachers, and he just loses it and just asks him to hold his hand. It's like, oh fuck.
And
this kid is so fucked up, justifiably so.
And he's not in therapy.
Yeah.
And his dad is a therapist, guys.
And props to the editor for sticking around just long enough for the other guy to be like, okay.
Yeah.
Like I don't see that's an interesting place to cut on.
Yeah.
You could like movies like this would cut earlier, but be like, hold my hand, like a genuine kind of show of like just emotion, and then the other reciprocating that kind of comfort.
And I also like the friends just trying to act as if it's no big deal. Like, oh, he's out here, he's smoking again. I guess we're all fine. And it's like one of those, like, I remember I had a friend in high school who lost his dad. And it's like, you don't really know how to help somebody grieve in high school. You're an idiot.
There's also a bit of toxic masculinity in that, like, men aren't allowed to show their emotions. Like you said, like a 16-year-old boy, not supposed to cry like that. Yeah. You know, you're man up. Deal with, oh my God, what happened to him?
Yeah.
He should be allowed to cry, and they should be worried. Like, if it was a girl, and all of your girlfriends would be constantly like, are you okay? What can we do for you? You could cry all you want. Everyone's going to sit and hug you. But men, you're like, nope, you gotta be, everything's fine.
Yeah. And it's again, another thing I like about this movie is that's all in the movie without ever spelling it out for you. Mm-hmm. And I feel like lesser movies, like if this was like a Platinum Dunes movie, there'd be an entire conversation about how men can't cry like that. And it's like, no, we can just understand that socially he'd be made fun of for crying like that, no matter what happened to him. And it's like,
and that's fucked up.
It is.
Yeah, and
men should cry. Cry if you want. I mean, don't be annoying about it.
Well, what kind of stands out to me now, interestingly enough, as we're talking about it, is like all this praise we're heaping on it for movies that we've kind of deemed as good. And I've been trying to think of, as we're talking about, what's kind of doing that for me, because the grief stuff is really, really great in how they handle it. So I'm curious where that shift downward is for everyone, kind of like where it kind of gets explicitly just good.
For great. Me, I think it's a movie where it's not the sum of its parts. And like I think the parts of the movie, like when you pick them out, are all fantastic. Like the acting is great, the script is good, the set design is beautiful, and whole movie's well shot, it's well cut. Everything is really good, but you put it together and it tells a story that we've all heard before in one way or another. It does things we've all seen before. We've all seen the mom crouched in the corner on the side of the room, like that was in Conjuring, it was in Babadook, it was in Mother, it was in the list goes on and on. Like all these things we've seen before, and just because this movie did it better than all of them, it didn't bring anything new necessarily to the table.
I mean, I haven't seen a lot of horror movies, but I definitely have not seen the main character suspended from the ceiling, sawing her own neck off.
Sure, yeah.
That was one thing.
Yeah, but
But
That's
she's
like the
also been in like
cherry
a
on
white
top.
gown, and that's kind of an iconic
true.
motherly white gown kind of.
again, Conjuring,
Yeah.
like these, and not even like that long ago. So I think that's where,
Okay.
if you want to go for like, why are we saying this is good, not great? It's probably our own fault that we've just seen too many fucking movies.
For me, like I was so keyed into maybe the grief part of this. It was a great movie about grief, and then for me that shift happened when it became more about the Paimon's possession
Yeah.
and the cult thing, where it started to shift over into this territory that I've seen before. And for me, I think that diminished that a little bit because I was so keyed in on the grief that it was just translating to this kind of cheesier horror. But it's, like
I
that's
had,
also doing.
I had the opposite because like I love the Babadook for grief so much because I still will say that it's the best movie about grief ever.
I
Yeah.
have not seen that movie. I was under the impression it was about a gay man in a top hat.
It is not. That was a Netflix mistake where they
Okay.
accidentally put it under LGBTQ
Oh, I
for a
see.
day,
I
and
see.
everyone thought that was funny, and now they're
No.
saying it's about homosexuality.
okay.
It is not in any way about homosexuality, and the people who are trying to like bullshit their way into it are wrong.
Okay.
It's about grief.
Copy that.
It really annoys the shit out of me because I
And I
think
think
that
with-
is the best horror movie made of the past 20 years.
have to
And I
watch
think-
it.
So good.
I think with that one, for me, it was the parental kind of duality of
Yeah.
hating and loving your child at the same time. And
Yeah.
that, like, as a new parent at the time watching that was where I was cued in on this.
Yeah.
Whereas I was so specifically cued into the very specific depiction of grief and loss that maybe it was more of just a whiplash jumping into the scarier moments.
Sure.
I'm on board for both of these movies that this movie is.
Yeah.
But the collective, like you said, maybe just felt like a weird like cake that you baked that didn't quite, the two
It was
pieces don't-
unapproved.
unapproved.
And at the same time, though, the grief was what was propelling everything else.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
she did all that because she was grieving.
Yeah,
Like
so
if Charlie hadn't died, she wouldn't have done the seance. She wouldn't have been looking. She wouldn't have been
Yeah.
trying to find a spirit. And then that's what made them all weak in the end. So it was necessary. The grief was propelling the story forward
Yeah.
more than the people were.
Yeah. Well, the people definitely weren't.
Yeah.
well, and then as a sense of like you giving yourself over and becoming like this movie does. A lot of other movies, like we said, have done these things. Candyman's done this. The Witch
Yeah.
did this, and The Witch had such a strong kind of like come with me and I accept it kind of moment
Yeah.
that
People think it's a happy ending. They did it so well that people are like, oh, it's a happy ending for him. Like,
Oh,
no,
look.
it's fucking not.
no, right. Whereas, like you said, not adding a new thing to it. This was
Yeah.
just a treehouse with a tin can statue that he kind of replaces.
Yeah.
But like, yeah. So like, it's weird. It's kind of the ending is where I start to drop more. But even though its ending is still pretty good.
The ending, I think the ending's solid. I think it works really well, but it is just. I think we're hitting the nail on the head. We're getting almost redundant with it, where it's like it's great, but because we've seen so many movies,
Yeah.
it just doesn't really. It doesn't impress us as much as it might if you're not like a super movie buff and watch movies all the fucking time.
Yes, but also because we've seen so many horror movies, there was still a great fun in when he like runs up the stairs into the attic. You're like, don't go up there. What are you doing?
Yeah, what are you doing? Don't do that.
Like, everybody knows not to go up there.
And like
When you can glide.
as he's going up the thing into the attic, I'm like, if there's old naked people up there, I swear to God. And then old naked people, I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me.
I like they had the old naked people just waving to him in the bushes, like hi, like a pleasant, like hi neighbor, and I was like, oh,
And that's what's funny is because that's what makes him jump out the window. He's
Whoa!
just like, there's a picture of me with my eyes gouged out. I just watched the charred corpse of my dad. My mom is sawing her own head off, suspended from the ceiling. Fucking old people waving at me. I'm out.
that was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
Oh,
naked
ugly
people.
naked people, I'm out of here.
Probably hasn't spent a lot of time at the gym because there are always ugly naked
The
people.
naked olds.
Sorry, not ugly, old naked
Old
people.
naked people.
I want no part of this orgy.
Yeah, it's a lemon party. That's what this that's the scene after we cut.
Meanwhile, the headless horseman is over here, but listen to my jam.
I think it's time to move into quotes on this. My quote I already said once by accident, but I will say it again. It's in a dream, but it is still totally what she feels, and she makes that abundantly clear throughout the entire movie. When Alex Wolff's character asks her, "Why are you afraid of me?" and she says, "I never wanted to be your mom," and then just immediately covers her mouth, like, "Oh, I shouldn't have said that." And then he keeps asking her more questions, and she lets go and says more horrible things, and covers up again. And then more horrible things and covers up again.
Aren't they also being drenched in like paint thinner too in that scene, or is that a different?
By
scene?
the end of it, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's like, I'm watching this movie with my son in my arms,
Oh,
feeding
my
him,
God.
and like, I never want to be your mom, and I was like, I've always wanted to be your dad. Don't listen to the mean movie. But it's just one of those things where it's like, I know those moms. I have friends with some of those moms who are just grinning and bearing it. And it's like...
Well, and when a movie says this, it feels like you said it.
Yeah. And
It feels like suddenly the words came out of your mouth. And it's hard to explain, but like, I didn't mean it. Like I watched this, therefore I said it. It's a very weird kind of.
I enjoy the movie, but I disagree with it. Don't read into this, baby. I know you can understand everything that's happening.
I read a really cool article. I don't remember where recently about a woman talking about the shame about how it feels to be a mother who doesn't really want to be a mother, and how much shame there is, and how if you feel pressure. That's why I hate when people are like, why don't you have kids? You should have kids. It's like you should, instead of wanting to, you should have them to make somebody a grandparent or whatever, because then you get women who have babies because society has pressured them into it and they don't want them. And that's a very common problem, that you have a lot of women raising babies and they never wanted to be a mom.
Yeah, and it's not fair to either of them.
Yeah.
And it's brutal. And movies like this make you go, oh yeah, maybe you just shouldn't have kids.
Well, that's what I always try to explain. Like when my mom would be like, or anybody would just be like, why don't you make your mom a grandma? Why don't you give your mom a kid? And I was like, is that why you want me to have a kid? Do you want me to have a kid so that my mother can be a grandmother? Like, what a terrible reason to birth a child. My mother lives in North Carolina.
I would say that's a worse reason than to keep the marriage together.
Yeah. You should have a kid because you want to have a kid.
Yeah.
No other reason.
Yeah, Hereditary. Next.
I had a line in mind, but I want to do a moment instead. It's the scene where she wakes up. Annie wakes up and has all the bugs, and she follows it to her son's room, Peter's room, and sees him all like the corpse of Charlie. And then she just it's quiet, but she opens her mouth to scream, and then you hear him kind of fade in, being like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And then it goes back to normal. Just the visceralness of that scene with her facial expression. I don't know, I cued into opening her mouth in horror and screaming. This movie did a very good job of that.
Yeah.
And that particular scene, I think, stood out to me the most out of anything anyone actually said.
That was a rough one.
It was. I was like,
I don't like ants. Like they freak me out. So seeing both heads covered in ants, I'm like, no.
And then her face was a literal mirror of my react. Like it felt like it felt like a literal reaction.
So Jandy walked in, she's like, "What the fuck is happening here?"
I'm like, ah! But yeah, that was such a great moment.
It's a good one. It's a punch, that's for sure.
Yeah.
What about you?
I guess I'm gonna go with when she was doing her eulogy for her matriarch, for the grandma.
Yeah.
Ooh,
And just she was a very difficult woman, which maybe explains me. I feel like you don't really see many people kind of discounting people who just died, and she does that in that moment, but in a heartfelt and loving way as well. So she's basically it just kind of set the tone. This woman was not the best woman in the world, but she's still somehow loved, even though she's not.
Well, that was as soon as she says I'm happy to see so many strange faces here.
Yes.
As soon as she said that, I'm like,
she was very secretive.
Smell a cult.
What I like about that particular scene is they don't edit, they don't make the cut when they should. They give you an extra second to punctuate what she just said.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And there's a whole level of acting in that half a second.
Yeah.
That I think is so great.
Mm-hmm.
That yeah.
Mine is right after the decapitation in the car, when he's sitting there and he doesn't even turn around. He just kind of looks in the mirror and then he just kind of goes, "You're okay." And then just drives away. That was such a, granted, I've never decapitated anyone with my car.
You haven't? You should try it. It's a blast.
But I found that so relatable that the minute you've even if it's just dropping a smashed glass on the floor, or anytime you do something that is going to be a pain in the ass to fix, or something that you can't fix or whatever. I mean, don't we all do it? Your immediate reaction is, it's fine. I'm fine.
Yeah.
Everything's fine. Nothing is bad. And then you just sort of take a minute before you realize, okay, now I have to fix whatever's broken. But that was, in the minute that happened, he just and then just driving straight home and going straight in the house and just leaving the body in the car. I was like, holy shit. But I just love that he was just like, you're fine.
Review system. I'm going for movies about families. All right, I'll go. I'm going with Royal Tenenbaums. And I'm doing that because this movie's all about a family that's cursed, and it's all about the matriarch who has basically ruined things for everyone there on down because of what they wanted and their own selfish needs. And I think that is very relatable to Royal Tenenbaums, where Royal ruins that whole fucking family because he's so goddamn selfish. Granted, Royal Tenenbaums, they fix things and everything ends up hunky-dory except for a dog. Whereas this movie goes the very opposite way.
I had one that popped in my mind as like a joke, and then I spent too much time trying to think about it and get it to work.
Was it Fast and Furious?
No.
Well, that's not technically a family.
Yeah, fuck it, I'm
That's
going to
all
do
a
it. Swiss Family Robinson.
There you go.
It's the family decides to go out on a trip, and they get, stranded, and it's all because of the parents' fault.
Yeah. It has Matt LeBlanc in it. Everybody loves Matt LeBlanc.
Oh, speaking of Matt LeBlanc, I'm just gonna go with the first movie because I haven't thought of a better one. We're gonna go with Lost in Space, which is it's not as good a movie as this is, but it is definitely fucking dysfunctional. And there's still insects in it, and there's a very bad man, and the little kid is pretty traumatized.
Yeah. Last but not least.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
we had a bunch of bullshit answers here. That's what the movie system for.
I guess so. I was initially wanted to say, like, when I was coming in, I was going to say, like, Sunshine, because it falls off the rails at the end for me. But I guess I'll go with Interstellar for similar reasons.
Okay.
That's about the family trying to get back together, and this is about the family trying to get back together with a god. So,
okay.
Sure.
That works. Okay, so we're going to do a quick round of plugs. As always, listen to Venture Bros. Venture Brothers podcast comes out every Monday at 10 a.m. We are in the midst of season 2. We're actually coming closer and closer to the end of season 2, which is sad because season 2 is just nothing but joy from episode 1 to the end of the season. And then be sure to check out Samwise. That comes out Wednesdays? Tuesdays. Also at 10 a.m., I believe. Yep.
10 or whenever the upload
finishes.
That one's a little bit easier to listen to than all 3 of our shows because that one can be anywhere from like 10 minutes to like 20 minutes. And then this one's usually an hour, a little bit change. And it's a little bit
of a different beast from the other ones because the other ones are about a particular element of pop culture in some way.
Yeah.
This is using an element of pop culture to actually give advice. It's actually an advice show.
You can ask any question you want.
Yeah. And then if you email them in or anything like that to sam.wise@ATH. Is it samwise.ath or sam.wise.ath?
It is sam.wise.ath@gmail.com.
That's what I thought. Okay, there we go. And then also always read our articles Wednesdays and Fridays. We had a bit of a lull there because I got way bogged down with a sick kid. But we are coming back up nice and strong.
Yep.
And that's it for the ATH plugs.
Every time it's my turn to write an article, like literally every time, somebody will be like, "Where's our article?" And I'll be like, "Fuck!" Every time.
I've been writing one article for like 3 weeks now because whenever I have time to do it is right when Corn just starts just going, I'm going to throw up everywhere. How does that sound? Sound good? Here we go. It's like, thanks.
That is.
Please tell me that's the noise he makes.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Aw.
He's done it twice, and it's horrifying. All right, that's it for my plugs. Anybody else have anything to plug?
Doctor Who just premiered. So if you want to look like the 13th Doctor, you can commission me to make you a coat. Don't buy inferior bullshit coats because there's a coat from a certain company. I'm not going to talk shit about them by name, but like it's not a very high quality coat and it's not screen accurate. Because I'm just saying this because I saw on a post recently that someone was talking about the pants and they were like, oh no, the screen accurate pants are X. And I was like, how do you know that? And they were like, well, because I bought them from this company and that's what they look like. And I'm like, no. That's not screen accurate. Just because a company makes it does not mean it's screen accurate. So if you want screen accurate, with one exception, the real coat has a split sleeve and I'm not making a split cuff and I'm not making split cuffs. But other than that, my coats are 100% screen accurate. Oh, and the fabric. I use a lighter weight fabric because it's better for walking around conventions. But Emily Blake sews on Etsy, so you can order it from there and I will make it for you to custom to your dimensions.
Cool.
Sweet.
Nice.
Tom, what are you making for people these days?
Movies?
Movies, fashion?
Movies and fashion.
Actually, you guys should get together, you being such a fashionista.
Yes, exactly. I should. You can tell by the Cuphead shirt that I have. I run currently an online writing community based around professional wrestling, so you can check that out at defiancewrestling.com. We write out segments and matches, and it's just basically novel-based, script-based sometimes. So, yeah.
A lot of fun.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, that's the end of our plugs. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Be sure to tune in next week as our horror month continues with the not widely seen, but probably should be, Tragedy Girls. So if you're listening to this on Thursday and you want to listen next week, go onto Hulu or borrow your friend's account for Hulu. Check out Tragedy Girls, and that's what we'll be talking about. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.